Members of Parliament, Ministers of Government, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting of Parliament, Central Committee meeting number 15 for today, a start of the handling of the draft budget 2024. During the morning session, we had presentations by all of the ministers as introduction to their respective 2024 draft budget policies. Following those presentations, which have also been received by members of Parliament and are with Parliament archives, the members of Parliament will now pose their questions on the presentations as well as the draft budget 2024 in general. We start the questions by members of Parliament with the member Akeem Arendelle. MP Akeem Arendelle, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chair Lady. Good afternoon, Council and Minister. I would like to say thank you all for the presentation for this morning, but we'll dive in straight to the questions. Minister of Finance, what measure will be taken to increase the government revenues and reduce the expense? Are there any plans to allocate extra funds towards paying out the justice workers faster? What loans are included in repayment in 2024 budget, and how does this relate to the COVID loans received from the Netherlands? Are there any risks or uncertainties mentioned that could impact the revenue or expenditures projects in the upcoming budget 2024? Towards the Minister of TIAT. You answered most of the presentation already, but just one more for update. I would like a for sure date for the finalization of the airport. You're saying June, but it's going to be before June. How far it is right now? We got update on the airport alone. Because you answered everything already in the presentation. Minister of Education, what are the timelines for the completion of the major capital investment projects like schools and facilities, like the construction and renovations? For the Minister of VSR, I saw that in the minimum wage was increased. Will this be the financial aid also be increased? And also for general affairs, what are some of the policy priorities for the 2004 mentioned, including issues related to internal kingdom affairs and foreign affairs, and also disaster management? What suspected training and digital skills development has the ministry focused on to improve the operation and service? And also, what type of vehicle hardware and facility upgrade are planned under the capital investment budget? Where are these upgrades needed? And also, I'll be forwarding these messages via email, and we'll give back questions via email. Also, let them back submitted back in an email also, no problem. There we are now.
Thank you, MP Akeem Arendelle. We now continue, and I give the floor to MP. Okay. It would have been at this time MP Ludmila de Weever, but we go over firstly and give MP Marcelina the floor at this time. MP Marcelina, you have the floor.
President of Parliament, Secretary General, members of Parliament, the public present, the ministers, and their support staff. Good afternoon. The forthcoming questions are especially for the Minister of Finance. Minister, it is stated that the IMF reports that the debt of country Sint Maarten are 1.4 billion, and that the total debt as of 2020 has increased by almost 316 million due to liquidity support received. However, the debt is expected to reach 980 million. All this information that I'm stating here is from the bijlage 2, appendix 2 of the toelichting of the budget book. What is surprising is that there is a contradiction between the report of the IMF that is mentioned in this appendix and the amount that is stated of 980 million. So there is a difference, a discrepancy of 450 million. To my concern, is that a big difference. There is, to my surprise, a huge increase in the interest costs in 2024 due to, for example, the refinancing. This is actually contradictory because the debt drops in the information of government, but the interest costs are rising sharply. Can you, Minister, explain why and how the debt dropped so much while we started with 1.4 on page 1 of the appendix 2, and then all of a sudden we mention 980 million? And can you, Minister, explain why the interest costs are rising despite a sharp decrease in the debt? A second question for you, Minister, is higher revenues are expected. These higher revenues are, as is explained, on the one hand, the results of higher tax revenues in 2023 that are, of course, also expected to be higher in 2024. In addition, as mentioned in the budget, as of January 1st, 2024, a so-called visitors' entry tax has been introduced, which should also generate approximately an amount of 20 million. The outgoing government faced substantially higher costs on the one hand because the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Finance, I think, failed to budget for the costs of the function book in the earlier years. On the other hand, this government was unable to reach agreements with the Netherlands to refinance the old loans and for more favorable terms. And as a result, we now face higher interest costs. To cover all these higher costs, totally nearing approximately 70 million, the outgoing government did something magnificent by topping up the revenues with exactly 70 million. Some of the additional revenue I expect will materialize, but on the other hand, it's highly doubtful that we are going to reach this 70 million in total as revenues for 2024. My question to you, Mr. Minister of Finance, how realistic do you think that this 70 million is in revenues for 2024? And if we do not reach these amounts calculated for 2024, how do you think the new incoming government will have to deal with that? That's a second question. The third question, Minister of Finance, on page 5 of the appendix, there is a sale mentioned from shares from Weever that approximates approximately 13.4 million. This special income is incidental in nature because it's a one-time gain of 13.4 million, and in my opinion, can therefore not form part as coverage of structural expenses in the multi-year budget. My question to you, Minister, is what use has the outgoing government made for this incidental revenue? In other words, what is the destiny of this 13.4 million that we get from the sale of the shares of Winair? Minister of Finance, the fourth question is, the country of Sint Maarten will make capital expenditures in 2024 in the amount of 200 million. This will be matched by a loan of almost 110 million. This can be read on page 8 of the same annex bijlage 2 of the toelichting of the budget 2024. However, there is no explanation given to this 110 to match the 200 million. I would like to know, Minister, if you could explain the effects of these investments on the costs the country will pay annually for interest and depreciation of these investments. My fifth question, Minister. Page 35 and 36 of this same appendix provides an insight into the formation of the Ministry of Finance. That overview shows that there is 43 vacancies within the Ministry of Finance, and above that, 32 vacancies are not budgeted for. So we have 43 vacancies open, but 32 of those 43 are not being budgeted in the budget. Can the Minister of Finance explain how the plans will be to fill these vacancies and how the coverage will be for these 32 vacancies? Question number 6, Minister. Page 167 provides an insight into the position of the government-owned companies, being our public companies. It is reported that the financial position, as we all know, of GB and TLM is very worrisome, and the one of the Post NV is also very delicate. Can the Minister of Finance explain to us, to Parliament, what the financial expectations will be for the coming 4 years and what for implications this will have for our budget in 2024, realizing the delicate position that TLM and especially GB is in at this particular moment? And Minister, I have one more very delicate topic to discuss with you. There is a court case liming with a bearing point that is coming in 2024 for us. And if we analyze this case, it's going about more than $10 million. My question is if, please, you can explain the people of Sint Maarten what can be expected from the court case of this bearing point, because I do not see space to handle a negative outcome of this court case to comfort bearing point. And to the Minister of Finance, I have one question. A mention is made about the future financial sustainability of the health and social funds. During the discussion that I had already in 2019, so that's about 5 years ago, as a new parliamentarian in that time, I emphatically pointed out that, in my opinion, the depletion of the social funds in Sint Maarten is forming a big risk for the future of this country. The SZV implementing agency is charged with, among others, the implementation of medical insurances for employees and their families, and for civil servants and their families. However, medical costs are much higher, as you know, than premiums being received by the ZV. In addition, Country Sint Maarten must also pay a portion to ZV to cover the so-called co-insured family members, and this has not always been done in the past. In order not to run into liquidity problems, an agreement was once made between Country Sint Maarten government and ZV that ZV may temporarily cover these deficits from the funds from ZV by using the funds of AOV and AVBZ to send them for the ZV and the OV funds that were constantly depleted. That was in that time a temporary measure, but the monies should be returned to the AOV and the AVBZ. If that is not the case, the AOV, that is actually for the pension of the people of this country, will come in big problems if we only think on replenishing of the funds of the ZV and OV by monies of the AOV, while we are not considering on second time to replenish the accounts back from AOV that will have to take care of the pension of the people in the nearby future. I would like to put the following question to you, Minister of VSA. Will the deficits of the ZV and OV fund still be covered by the AOV? And if yes, what is the legal base to do this? And secondly, if we continue to use the money from the AOV to cover the costs in ZV-OV, how are we going to restore, without considering that in the budgets, how are we going to restore the depletion on year base already going on for years from the AOV? These are the questions that I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Marcelina, for your questions. And I continue, and now I give the floor to MP Ludmila de Weever. MP de Weever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to you, to everyone here, and those listening in, and as well as viewing. Madam Chair Lady, my questions are very, very short. They're all based predominantly on the presentations that we received today. I will try my best to put it in full order of how they received. So starting first off with the Ministry of Finance. Overall, I just wanted to know where we are with the policy-based budgeting in this budget. Like, how far along are we? Because I remember last budget debate, we were talking a lot about it when it was, well, we were receiving a lot of information on it when we were, when you started to see this shift happening. So several ministers back then had presented this importance of shifting over to policy-based budgeting. And the reason I asked that high-level question is because of the fact that when we look at the budgets from last year and this year, it's also significantly bigger. Yes, there's a lot of text added to it, but also if we were making the push to policy-based budgeting, how far along in that process are we? Also, very briefly to the Minister of Finance, I remember when you were talking about your presentation, as the previous speaker just mentioned, that the Minister of Finance said most governments around the world are divesting and from government-related owned companies. So what I wanted to know, if this is foreshadowing basically of what we can expect from all government-owned companies, specifically Telem and GB, considering those have been the ones that have come under the limelight and microscope lately. I just want to know if this is foreshadowing. What's the plan overall happening with these companies then, if it is the trend that most governments around the world are divesting from them? But, you know, conveniently here, I kind of feel like they're divesting from it when they've actually been part of helping them fail. So going on to the Minister of ECYS, Ministry of Justice is the next one. Actually, for both Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Justice, and every single ministry, I have one request from all of them, please. If for the last 4 years, from the year 2020 up until this budget year, 2024, if they can provide an overview of the change in personnel every year. So what we have in the budget, right, is you have every ministry is divided up where you can see total employees that are in place now, total vacancies that they have, and so on and so forth. But it's very hard to understand the trend that is happening across the government if we do not see historical information. And especially when you have the Prime Minister in her presentation talk about human resource management system and what has to take place from the head of government, I really would like to request from each ministry, please, to provide a table showing the changes, how many persons have left government since the year 2020, how many vacancies have changed, if they have increased the amount of vacancies per ministry, how many employees were active during those years, the openings, all of that. When I provide the questions in writing, they will have the entire overview of the table of what I would like to see from each ministry to help us to understand how this human resource management system that's being implemented will help us across the board. Because what I know has been happening over the years is that a lot of persons have left. And when we talk about the drop in personnel when it comes to legal personnel, we are struggling to keep people working. And since we're on the Ministry of Justice, I can give an example of how many police officers have left. And they actually have left to go to Sabon Station. So for the Ministry of Justice, that's the only thing I would like to see, as well as all ministries. Moving on to ECYS. I take note of the ECYS project, the projected expenses. Bear with me because I have pictures of these presentations that we got. For ECYS, they talk about, the Minister of ECYS presented capital investments for 2024. I am just going to go straight away to the 12.1 million capital investment for the Construction High School, Charlotte Brookson Academy. And the reason I'm going to bring that up is that 12.1 million for a new school, especially one that had a lot of, what is the word I'm looking for? A lot of things happen in the past year when it comes to misappropriation of funds. The overall management of it. This is an academy that has given, a school that has given the opportunity for kids that are not going down the route of academics, and they're going more into the creative arts. So it's very important to have something like this here. But my question is, why put 12.1 million in a school instead of combining that with a performing arts space where NIA can use as well as Indisu? So I just want it to be a more holistic approach, as people like using the word these days so much. So, but 12.1 million for a school that had issues with the board and management in terms of how, with misappropriation of funds, you need to really sell that to me better, because while we do need a performing arts place, I want to see the magic that's going to happen with Charlotte Brookson Academy providing a space for the other two locations that are always, always in need of a better performing arts location. Let's see, moving on, I may take it out of the order, so I apologize in advance. Minister of Finance was doing the presentation for VROMI. I really appreciated it because even though it was the shortest and it didn't have a presentation attached, it actually highlighted overall successes, some successes, and some failures of the ministry. So what I want to recap of the increase, about 3 million in the revenue related to ERPA, and that is commendable to do it. But what I want to see happening in the future then is that it's across the board, right? And it's happening not just for the big persons that are the big players, the big companies, but it's happening across the board where you're seeing a cleanup and improvement of collections for that, because then perhaps then others can look at the Ministry of VROMI as an example in terms of revenue and really seeing a drastic increase in it. But what I did take note of, I do not have a presentation for them, was a 17 million project for wastewater treatment, if I'm not mistaken. And what I want to say with that is, while you're talking about a revenue increase, you also see that the attention is going to a major, major issue that we have on the island, across the island. And so we are having massive developments happening, but you're having these developments happen where actually I can name off a whole bunch of them, and I think I might save that for later on, where all of these housing developments that are happening, as well as building construction, actually, most of them, especially the newer places, have leakage happening. Existing places have leakage happening, and I'm talking about septic, sewage, offal water that is going into our Simpson Bay Lagoon. There is a continuous river that we have now on the Oyster Pond Road going into the Oyster Bay Lagoon. And, you know, it's unfortunate that this has to happen where it's public because people can see it. This is where we swim, right? It doesn't make any sense. So when you're talking about a $17 million project, I want to know, at the same time that you're going to be doing this investment, right? How are we going to strengthen the policy that's there, where even as you're handing out so willy-nilly these permits to different developments happening, that it comes with responsibility of knowing how to build a proper septic tank at your house, because you're getting permits, right, from this ministry to build. And then also, what is the future then for this 17 million project? How is it that we're going to connect into this public wastewater treatment? Is it going to be a law passed like the French side where all homes are required to be connected to the public wastewater facility? Because when you're taking into account what's happening on the hills, you have to have a policy hand in hand saying, if you have your own septic tank, you use these plastic containers that you have to bury underground, or if you have a pre-existing septic tank or septic at home, that you have it lined, and so on and so forth. I will basically tell anyone, take a drive up into Dutch Quarter, take a drive up into St. Peter's, take a drive on Oyster Bay where you just have a new hotel coming called JW Marriott, and you will see the new rivers we have. So unlike Dominica, we have new rivers that we created by really sketchy things happening in terms of new structures, new developments, new buildings, leaking septic throughout our entire island. And moving on to Algemene Zaken, so general affairs. Again, I may have missed this, but I will just reiterate, every ministry, please provide overview of changes for 2020 to 2024 of how many persons have left government, how many positions have been replaced, what is the total openings, and that sort of stuff. Because when it comes to Algemene Zaken, I mentioned briefly that my focus was on the HR management system that was being talked about. Because a big part of the struggle from the HR side is that persons just don't want to be there anymore. And they're leaving at an alarming rate. That is my concern. TEAT ministry, I take keen interest in the fact that we saw a new picture of a bathroom on Mulla Bay. Now, when there was a bathroom on Mulla Bay in the past, it belonged to the Mulla Bay Resort. They maintained it. And now, again, so the link here with Rami is, we're giving all of these people permits to be on the last sort of nice beach that we have, right? But I want to make sure that I'm not going to see a pipe coming from the developments underground when they go dig it at 1 or 2 in the morning, just like how some of them were done at 1 and 2 in the morning when they removed the rocks from the side of the road so that they could go and start their development at 1 and 2 in the morning. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to have this hidden pipe coming from these establishments into Mulla Bay Beach, because that's kind of the way that they were built and constructed, was in this shady way at 1 and 2 in the morning, moving the boulders out of the side of the road so that they could access the golf court to go onto the beach. And so when you're talking about this bathroom on the beach, that it's becoming so active that even people who had old permits from since 2014 are now being granted one without a proper renewal process that actually was outdated after 6 months of no construction happening. Normally, the way permits work here is that if you don't take action after being granted permits, you basically, as the requester, lose the rights on it. But I don't think anyone's been brave enough to actually implement that. So now, talking about the bathroom on the beach, I want to know why specifically Mulla Bay? Because we have a shortage of bathrooms in town. We have a shortage of public bathrooms all over the place. And what I want to warn is before I go on to the warning, what I would like to say is, lately there was a new establishment that coming on to Mulla Bay. And since all these people are keen on going on and establishing and basically overdeveloping Mulla Bay Beach, why you not make them pay? because they're making all this money now with these hastily arranged permits there on the beach, so make them pay. You want to establish on a beach, pay. Just pay. Pay for it rather than having a country that is having a hard time with a budget to go now put money towards a public bathroom when you're given permits on a place that's already overdeveloped. So make them pay for it. It's a wonderful idea. Going on to, and here's the warning that I want to give when you're going to be establishing public bathrooms on a beach, okay? I warned the current minister of Rami, when he was gonna put the cement garbage disposal places on Great Bay Beach, I warned him that when you put cement slabs with a sort of gate around it so that it can't fly out on a beach, so right next to where people lie on a lounge chair, when you do that, what's gonna happen is garbage is gonna come. You're providing a garbage disposal on a pristine, like white beach, sand beach. And this is what's happening now. If anyone takes the time to just go down on the boardwalk, all you have is overflowing trash continuously on a beach. That does not look very inviting to me. And you have people lounging on their chairs, having their bucket of beer with their umbrella overhead next to trash. So you have businesses on the boardwalk, but also businesses in town that are just dumping their trash on the street and on the beach side that just blows with the wind. So if you're trying to do this service of providing trash bins, because we have never had proper trash bins in town, and even if you have old remaining trash bins, they have no liner in it, so it just flies everywhere anyways. So if you're gonna do public beach, prepare and plan for it properly, and don't put it right next to where people have to lie on a lounge chair, because the location of that public restroom there that's happening is right next to where I'm gonna be lying down with my lounge chair and my umbrella. So think it through. Also, last one, VSI is actually just a question on the permits, right? So VSI, in your presentation of the figures, I noticed that, you would present the numbers from Budget 2023 and Budget 2024. But what you don't see, Budget 2023, actuals 2023, and Budget 2024. So when you're seeing that the actuals versus budget don't really correlate with what happens in the new year, which is 2024. So I just wanted to get an understanding of the overall presentation by asking one question. I look at work permits, right? So work permits in 2023 budget was 1.3 million. Work permits for 2024 budget was 1.3 million. But then when you look at the actuals from 2023, it was higher. So I don't know if it was 1.7, but the point is that it was higher. So my question is, why is it higher, but then you're still budgeting for it in a lower in 2024? So it seems to me then that what I see as a trend across the presentation is that the current budget is not taking into account the actuals, because then you would have it maybe a little bit closer. So if the minister can just give me overall explanation on how he came to the 2024 figures, especially when the actuals of 2023 were higher or significantly lower, then that would actually let me understand it a little bit better. And then also, what I wanted to make sure that wasn't happening was, if you look at the work permit specifically, that you're budgeting a low figure to keep people maybe to not question, well, how many more permits are we gonna give? So you're trying to basically hide the actual figure of how many work permits are given out to foreigners. So if it's 1.7, but you're budgeting 1.3, why are you not budgeting the actual amount? Or are you gonna decrease it in a year? So it's just to have the fair presentation of the information, that you're not trying to hide the actual amount of work permits given to foreigners. And that is it for me today. Last question, sorry, I didn't miss out on it. I will ask it in the next round. That's it, Madam Chair Lady, thank you.
MP Ludmila de Weever, thank you for your questions, and we continue. And I now give the floor to MP Kevin Minget. MP Minget, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pleasant good afternoon to the honorable ministers and my MP colleagues and everybody watching through the Tribune and via media platform. To you, Madam Chair, I have a couple questions, and I want to start off with the Minister of Rami and Justice. What are the plans to mitigate the traffic jam? Please organize your answer by short, medium, and long-term goals. If there are plans, are they reflected on the budget? What approaches has been taken so far about the traffic situation? I assume that such a process will involve research or evaluation for optimal road usage and network. A proposed solution and a cost-benefit analysis of the traffic situation. Is that the case? Continue with Minister Vrami and Justice. Has Vrami, our Minister of Justice, investigated the matter of stoplights in the school district as opposed to limited policeman resources? If yes, why has this not been a viable option? Could Justice please expand on the Radix immigration software project as it makes a significant part of capital expense? Please elaborate procurement process and why the minister opted for this software. Moreover, is this software in collaboration with or can be linked to the existing software in the Dutch Caribbean, Curacao, and Aruba? Meaning, can reports be shared with the aforementioned? Moving towards for the Minister of TIAT, through you, Madam Chair. Minister of TIAT, can you please elaborate on the status of the marketplace? Has a date been given with regards to the commencement of the project? Does the budget amount of the marketplace include the temporary relocation of the market vendor? Has a location been selected? If so, where? What are the plans to ensure that foot traffic is driven to the new temporary location? I understood you had some plans for a bus terminal. However, is there finalization of the necessary policy changes to enhance the public transportation system? If yes, how does the current bus terminal fit into the new policy? Has Parliament been made aware of the intended policy changes? Have the stakeholders been involved in the process? The development of the bus terminal is jumping the gun and should not supersede the necessary policy changes. Through you, Madam Chair, continue with Minister Tiat. In regards to the BAFPAL and BOR courses for the already employed staff, which is required and compulsory for not only the justice worker, but also for controllers of different ministries. What is the status and predictions in making this a reality, as this is said to be mandatory when taking such positions in order to execute their function legally and successfully? For example, to execute fines in OPVs. Through you, Madam Chair, this is for Minister of Education. Could the Minister of Education please elaborate on the ICT software for education that has been listed at capital expense? Can the Minister of Education expand on the facilities that will be revamped by the Department of Sports? Every year we have competition, Madam Chair, Battle of the Fittest, and we see the revenue that the Battle of the Fittest does bring to the island of Sint Maarten. And I also, Madam Chair, want to also bring up, there's something, as growing up as a child here in Sint Maarten, we had something called Kingdom Games. This is something I would love to see how, if we can bring this back here in Sint Maarten and see how we could create more competition and, you know, exceeding our young youths in Sint Maarten so we could, you know, they could compete and they could bring our neighboring islands here to compete with us as well. To you, Madam Chair, I have a question for the Minister of VSR. Minister of VSR, I hear you have to expand on the Otley Care program. Is the public transportation workers and also proprietor included in this scheme? I have not heard anything with regards to the cannabis research and legislation, although this was procured, completed in 2022. What was the outcome of this project? Was the contract being awarded, and to whom? Was this work completed? How is the outcome of this research implicated in this current budget towards the trajectory of the possible legislation of cannabis on the island? That'd be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Minget. We now go over, or at least continue, and I invite MP Melissa Gums to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues, the ministers joining us today and their support staff, and those joining us online or via radio. Thank you to all the ministers for their presentations. I'm going to keep it in order of speaking as best I can. For the Minister of Finance, what is the status of the procurement legislation? As on your slide in the presentation, it only said phase 1, and I don't recall hearing you mention specifics in your speaking notes. The procurement legislation is something that we have been asking about since 2020, in addition to the required LBHAM for tendering for all of government. But just an update on both those pieces, actually, because you also did not mention the LBHAM in the presentation. Could the minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, provide a specific breakdown of what the 90 million for CapEx has been allocated to thus far? So every piece of allocation that has been made, if we could get a breakdown of that. In your presentation, Minister, you mentioned the collection of casino and lease land outstanding fees. And when you presented on behalf of RAMI, the lease land specifics were provided. So what has been collected in the past versus what was collected in 2023. But maybe I missed it, but could you provide the total of outstanding casino fees that were collected? And just to touch a bit on the proposed, because I assume it's a proposed sale of Winair shares, because in the time since it was mentioned by the minister, I've gotten several messages asking if we're selling off one of the only properly performing government-related entities. I'm not necessarily against divesting when it comes to government-related companies, but if it's still in due diligence stages or earlier, if we could get that update, then I would know to put a pin in it and circle back later. For the Minister of ECYS, Minister, you mentioned preserving and highlighting our culture and heritage, as has been mentioned several times throughout this last term, the previous term. So I'm asking through the chairwoman for an update on the status of the Monument Fund, which is specifically tasked to be part of that preservation and highlighting of our culture and heritage. So if the minister could provide that information, that would be great. And Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, what is the timeline for delivering the results of the EGMA and the EGRA projects? And is Parliament also one of those stakeholders that's going to receive those results to see what yield has been achieved? And finally, for ECYS, what is the scaling plan for internet access at the schools? So I understand that broadband capacity has improved, as the minister said, and I think he meant to say megabits per second. The capacity has improved, however, improvements can be subjective. For example, if you're adding devices like IP security cameras, et cetera, to school networks, it's going to sap from available bandwidth, and that could cause network issues. In fact, any internet connection, the more IP devices you add to it, however fast your connection is, you're going to have a considerable impact on that if there's no IP availability. So I've been consistently asking this minister about the digital infrastructure at the schools and improvement plans for such for the last 4 years. So while I'm glad to hear the speed has increased, it doesn't really provide a proper view of the state of the overall infrastructure and scaling plans that the ministry has when it comes to the schools, in particular as education itself moves towards more of a digital realm. For the Minister of VSA, what has been, through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, what has been the impact to date of the SZV wage cap increase on the ZV fund? If the minister could provide a breakdown of what has been received, what has been spent, et cetera, to date, so since the implementation of that legislation. And Minister, you mentioned, and I think correctly so, that the SAHA is not going to eliminate the issues facing OZ Air, but it will allow it to continue to be paid, to be covered, basically. And my question is actually for how long? It said, what are projection models set about the timeline attached to the lifeline that the SAHA is meant to provide for OZR and for SZV in general? And this ties into something that I've tried to highlight, which is that healthcare is at the end of the day all about numbers. However, for an economy of such a small scale such as ours, you will consistently run into this sustainability and longevity issues. So if the minister could share a bit about how he sees that timeline working. So what is our, from the moment that if this is implemented, what, from the moment the clock starts?
Just to be clear, that question.
Yes, sir.
Is it for me or because Minister of Finance made mention of what you were asking?
The mic.
Oh.
Well,
You have to address the chair.
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you.
Minister Otley, you have a question based on what our Member of Parliament is currently saying?
Yeah, both of us, yeah.
And that question is, to who is this particular question and comment directed? Is that what you?
Yeah.
it's a
And-
VSA, Madam Chair. I
Okay.
know that the Minister of Finance is who said it, but the responsibility lands essentially in the realm of VSA, so that's why I left it under my VSA question.
Yes, you may continue, MP Gums. It is clear.
Okay. And finally, this time, what update, if any at all, can the minister provide regarding the ongoing construction of the Sint Maarten General Hospital? It was not really mentioned in anywhere that I could really find. So if we get an update on that, since, yeah, I think everyone who drives past there would also have a similar question. For the Minister of TEAT, Minister, regarding the 4 LBHAMs that you mentioned under key achievements, each with a various status in your presentation, could you provide or just inform the legal basis, you know, for regulating those very specific areas in that way, so via LBHAM? And the embarkation, disembarkation cards that you spoke about, is this going to be physical cards? Like, what is the intention? Or is it the intention to implement a system like Aruba and Curacao have, where it's all digital, thus improving data collection and integrity and minimizing cost and waste? And what's been done? The Minister of TEAT and others over the years, all of them, have spoken about economic diversification. But I'm asking what has been done to encourage actual economic diversification. And I say actual because, you know, 100+ tourism-related companies all operating in the same economic wheelhouse in terms of licenses, etc., is not actual diversification. So if the minister could share what has been done, maybe in collaboration with his other colleague ministers, to lay the groundwork for that. Diversification through education, for example, and other such methodologies. And for the Ministry of VRAMI, through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, could you clarify, Minister, if you said 18 or 80 million for the potential land purchase? Okay, it's 18 million. Okay, so the amount was not clear. So I just wanted to ask that. And regarding the sewage network, the minister mentioned that it's co-financed by the Netherlands and then said we are putting up 45 million. So is that from our end only, or does that include the co-financing? If the minister could kind of explain that a bit further. And finally, for VRAMI, I'm surprised by the move to purchase a vessel for inspection of the lagoon for inspectorate. Now, currently, VRAMI subsidizes the Nature Foundation, who already have persons with the necessary licenses and experience to pilot those vessels in and outside of the lagoon. So, to me, why not just strengthen that relationship then? And that, because there is a SLA, I believe, in place with Nature Foundation. That way, there's no need to hire and certify specific persons for this, and then you have a boat captain sitting down in VRAMI, essentially with nothing to do until an inspection is needed to be done. And those were my questions for now, Madam Chair, and I'll await the responses. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Minister Gums, for your questions. And we continue with the members of Parliament posing questions to the ministers. And MP Roseburg, you have the floor. So according to the digital screen, it would have been MP Roseburg, but according to the written list, we have actually MP Grisha Heiliger Martin up next. My apologies, MP Roseberg. It's actually MP Hiler. MP Hiler, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you. It's my fault, actually. I pressed it off by mistake.
Oh, you took it off.
Took it off, yes. Good afternoon to you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to the ministers, and good afternoon to those visiting with us in the Tribune. Good afternoon to those listening and viewing. Good afternoon to everyone. Madam Chair Lady, my biggest concern with this budget is that it lacks realism. I mean that nowhere in this budget did I see reference to the global geopolitical developments that have been taking place during the last few years. That's something I've been hammering on the last 2 years in the last term. These developments, Madam Chair Lady, will continue to affect Sint Maarten as a small and open economy. Just to name a few, the potential banking, the potential banking and financial economic crisis in the US will affect our tourism, and the de-dollarization as a result of ongoing shifts from a unipolar to a multipolar world, including the expansion of the BRICS, something, again, I've mentioned many times in the past. Just these two developments alone will have serious effects on our economy. And if we don't proactively address them in how we manage the business of the people, especially if we don't effectively address them in how we manage the business of the people, Madam Chair Lady. But yet, I don't see any of these developments reflected or mentioned in the budget, neither in the numbers nor the explanatory notes. But anyways, I will just start with my questions, Madam Chair Lady, and I will be sending them by email. All questions will be sent in writing, and I will proceed based on the schedule that was placed this morning. I'll start with the Minister of Finance. With regards to the tourism tax that was listed on the presentation today, how will it be implemented? And correct me if I'm wrong, will it be placed by the airport? And if so, will it be by the departure or the arrival hall? And who will get this revenue, government or airport? Will this amount be included in tickets? And was the private sector consulted? Does Sint Maarten still have a credit sovereignty rating like Moody's? If so, what is it? And if not, why? Can the Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, provide Parliament with an update on fiscal reforms? What is the current status and what are the timelines? How are the effectiveness of budgetary allocations and policies monitored, and how are the adjustments made to achieve the desired outcomes? How does the budget address the stability of energy resources and communication systems? Madam Chair Lady, here I refer to my general remark about the government's lack of realism. Seeing that the government and central banks around the world are buying up gold and increasing their gold reserves, can the Minister provide Parliament with a written justification and overview regarding the central bank's recent sale of the gold reserves? Why would you sell a stable and valuable global commodity like gold, which keeps increasing in value, in exchange for a Dutch Caribbean guilder that is only used by a few hundreds of thousands of people? With regards to the cadastre, Madam Chair Lady, last year, Parliament had a closed-door meeting with the Managing Board of the cadastre upon the request, upon the suggestion, actually, of the Minister during the question hour earlier that year. The financial information provided during that meeting had most, or if not all, MPs very concerned about the role of the Supervisory Board and its observance of corporate governance principle and the future financial viability of the cadastre. So with that, I'd like to ask a few more questions. Who are the current members of the Supervisory Board of the cadastre? What are their respective functions besides their membership of the Supervisory Board? And what are their areas of expertise? Was the selection process conducted in compliance with the Corporate Governance Code? And can Parliament receive an overview of this process? When were they reappointed and for how long? And was their reappointment done in full compliance with the Articles of Incorporation of the cadastre and the Corporate Governance Code with regards to the maximum times that they can be reappointed? And my final question to the Minister of Finance, what is the status of the recruitment process of the CFO and the COO of the cadastre? My next line of question is to the Minister of ECYS, mainly about culture. Madam Chair Lady, culture and tourism are essentially linked, I believe so, often serving as a cornerstone of our nation's identity and economic viability. Culture enriches the tourism experience by offering unique attractions, traditions, and heritage sites that draw visitors from around the world. Furthermore, tourism provides a platform for cultural exchange, fostering understanding and appreciation among diverse populations. Together, they contribute to the economic growth, job creation, community development, and while preserving and promoting cultural heritage for the future generations. A symposium was organized in 2023 on the orange economy entitled Where Creativity, Innovations, and Growth Meet. Are any of the outcomes of this symposium reflected in the 2024 budget? Minister, through you, Madam Chairlady, recognizing the symbiotic relationship between tourism and culture, I have a few more questions. Does the proposed budget align with the vision of integrating culture and tourism, particularly in light of initiatives like Culture, the Artistry of Life, and the transition of Phillipsburg into a creative city? Can you provide insights into how the 2024 budget and plans reflect the significance of these sectors? How are initiatives aimed at enhancing cultural experiences for tourism and locals alike integrated? How is the tourism brand aligned with the cultural brand, and is it therefore a national brand? What measures are in place to ensure that tourism supports the preservation and promotion of Sint Maarten's cultural heritage? Can the Minister, through you, Madam Chairlady, elaborate on how the budget addresses the mandate of defining, developing, safeguarding, and promoting the expression of the people of Sint Maarten, especially within the context of the orange economy? Regarding the 4 pillars, arts, heritage, creative service, and media, how does the budget allocate resources to each pillar and ensure they work synergetically to achieve the department's objectives? Could the Minister, through you, Madam Chairlady, explain how the budget supports initiatives aimed at fostering social cohesion and dialogue, such as ICE Sint Maarten or IRICH, the IRICH, and the development of the nationwide brand, and how these tie into the broader cultural and economic goals? In light of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and Sint Maarten's evolving identity as a nation, how does the budget address the need for resilience and adaptation within the cultural and creative sectors? How does the budget prioritize the development of infrastructure under each pillar, including aspects such as safeguarding, archiving, and signing on to international conventions and treaties? Can you provide insight into how the budget supports initiatives aimed to promoting cultural diversity, inclusivity, and how these efforts contribute to the overall goals of the department? And Minister, through you, Madam Chairlady, considering the theoretical framework presented, how does the budget ensure adequate support for each of the sectors within the creative industry, and how does it leverage their potential for economic, societal, and symbolic value? Given the emphasis on culture as a driver for sustainable development, could the Minister, through you, Madam Chairlady, outline specific strategies within the budget aimed at creating decent work, reducing inequalities, and promoting gender equality within the culture and creative sector? How does the SME training program contribute to the orange economy? Additionally, can the Minister provide information on the number of artists and who have benefited from both the grants and the training program? Through you, Madam Chairlady, I'd like to ask the Minister, how does the proposed budget reflect the department's commitment to the UNESCO's agenda for sustainable development and the orange economy principles, and what measures are in place to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of budget allocations towards these goals? How successful were the activities conducted last year, and what metrics are available to measure their effectiveness overall? And are there any plans for cultural policy, and where is it identified in the 2024 budget? My final question to the Minister of ECYS is the Culture Department has allocated a budget of 70,000 for the national anthem. What steps will be undertaken for the anthem's development, and how would this process be executed, and what is the timeline? My next question is now to the Minister of TIAD. I think it was in this order. Through you, Madam Chair Lady, I'd like to start by asking the Minister of TIAD, can the Minister of TIAD provide an update on the status of the marketing reps contract and the status of their payments? What steps are being taken to place and execute the marketing campaign for the upcoming summer season, this upcoming summer season? How does the Minister view the proposal for establishing an informal tourism advisory council, and what actions, if any, are being considered to establish such? Regarding the private sectors and its objectives, what strategies has the Minister and COM considered to address the challenges posed by the extended low season and its impact on the business and workers? Are there specific metrics and benchmarks being proposed to measure the success of initiatives aimed to addressing the shoulder and low season? How does the Minister of Tourism plan to shift focus from quantity to quality of visitors? Regarding revenue generation, what progress has been made in implementing a structural approach to collecting room tax from platforms such as Airbnb and VRBO? How much was generated from this in 2023? Are there any challenges anticipated in enforcing tax compliance among shared economic accommodations, and how does the Minister plan to address them? With regards to airlift development strategy, can the Minister give an update on the establishment of airlift development strategy, particularly in light of the ongoing construction at PGIA and increased competition from the neighboring islands? How does the Minister intend to ensure affordability and improve connectivity as part of this strategy? Regarding cruise conversion program, can the Minister give an update on the cruise conversion program? What factors are considered in evaluating its potential financial benefits to the island? Regarding plans for the visitors and residents' experience, what steps are being taken to redevelop or reposition Philipsburg to increase economic activities in the evening, as well as to alleviate traffic congestion in other areas of the island? Are there any specific initiatives planned to enhance cultural, historical, and agricultural experience to visitors and residents? If so, what are they? Regarding tourism awareness program, can the Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, provide an update on the implementation of the proposed PR and training strategy to make residents aware of the importance of tourism and potential career opportunities within this industry? What progress has been made in implementing sensitization programs, especially at the elementary and secondary school levels? Regarding the marine sector, how is the Minister addressing the request to streamline the clear in and out process of the boats? Are there any identified bottlenecks hindering the development of the marine sectors? If so, what are they, and what steps are being taken to overcome them? Regarding the Economic Recovery Committee, Sint Maarten Tourism Authority, what discussions have been taken place regarding the establishment of an entity to coordinate dialogue between government and the tourism stakeholders? Are there still plans to establish a Sint Maarten Tourism Authority? If so, when will this body be set up? How does the 2024 budget address and ensure reliability and structural funding for this entity to prevent payment issues experienced to the STB? Regarding border control, what progress has been made in implementing the new border control system to provide better information and data intelligence on arrivals in Sint Maarten, and how is such data currently being used? With regards to the carrying capacity, I have a few questions there. The last carrying capacity study was done decades ago. Traffic congestion in Sint Maarten has significantly worsened. Surely you will agree that this situation is unacceptable for both residents and visitors to our island. Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, again, I would like to ask, because I know that one of my colleague MPs asked, could you please elaborate on the measures being taken to tackle this issue? And are there any specific plans outlined in the national budget to address this pressing concern? And how does the ministry intend to utilize this data for targeted tourism investment? I've noticed that the digital nomad segment has grown by leaps and bounds regionally in Curaçao, Aruba, the Dominican Republic, etc., and internationally. What about Sint Maarten? Has Sint Maarten implemented a digital nomad program? If not, why not? I need to, sorry, if I may, Madam Chair Lady. Just to clean. Okay. Capital improvement projects. How much of the CapEx was spent on the marketplace in the year 2023? Can you list the projects and provide the amount spent? Can you specify the extent of the progress made on the development of the marketplace project, which I think you already elucidated a bit in your presentation, but I'll still ask. And if, is there a timeline for the completion? Could you confirm if there was a bidding process conducted, and were the market vendors involved in the entire process? And was or is there a project manager tied to this project? And can you list all the investors of the project and detail any pending tasks? Additionally, what is the anticipated completion date of this project? I think I already asked that. On page 69, you list a CapEx. You list all the CapEx. Please explain the proposed plans for each category cited above and below. List what has taken place in 2023. How effective was each activity in 2023, and how did you measure the effectiveness of the Met Office of Civil Aviation, the Vendors Village, if different from the market, research and development, intellectual property, land improvement? With regards to the Harbor Group of Company, the Port of Galles Bay in Marigot is expanding its cargo facility. What synergies are there with the Port of Galles Bay of companies, and how will this affect the Port of Sint Maarten group of companies, of the Port of Sint Maarten group of companies? Port of Galles Bay, PSG, who are PSG competitors, and what are the differences in their rates? What is the PSG's position on the effects of the fuel throughput and the Caribbean or the US market for fuel bunkering? Is the company looking at facilitating fuel services to enhance the quality, efficiency, and price of fuel on the island? If yes, how? With regards to agriculture, it is evident worldwide that food insecurity, employment, and economic stability are important. Did the minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, look at a dedicated division or department for agriculture? I think I may have gotten that a bit in the presentation, but not sure, so I'm asking. If so, how would such an initiative support small-scale farmers, promote sustainable practices, enhance food resilience, complementing the tourism sector's growth, and contributing to overall economic stability? With regards to marketing and PR, with regards to the various public relations groups hired by the Ministry of TIAT, which takes on the largest part of the budget, what exactly is the role of the public relations firm in all markets and their responsibility? What monitoring and evaluation system is in place to make sure that this is working in terms of our main objectives of increased tourism receipt? And lastly, I would like to talk and ask about, well, not lastly, but one before last, EDC. Could the minister elaborate on the key priorities of the recently reestablished EDC? What measures is the EDC implementing to attract foreign investments and promote trade opportunities? What are the funding sources of EDC? Outline them, please, and indicate how they can fund the economic development initiatives. Is there a corporate code under the EDC? And my last question to the Minister of Tourism, TIAT, is both Sint Maarten and Friends Sint Maarten a member of the CTO, the Caribbean Tourism Organization? My next line of question is for the Vrami Minister. And I'm going to ask this, hopefully, for the last time, and I hope I can get an answer on it. Madam Chair Lady, I would like to again touch on the issue of the natural risks as outlined in the presentation of acrobats 2 years ago. Today I saw the properties of the carbon that is being put on auction. And that area is the one of the very few that acrobats identified as risky when it comes to rock fall due to construction. One of the others was the road on the way to the cruise and cargo facilities there in Point Blanche, where both visitors and locals pass constantly. This serious issue as it relates to the safety seems to have been ignored for almost 2 years. So again, I'd like to ask the following question, one question regarding this. Did the minister ever review that presentation provided by acrobats? And if so, can the minister provide Parliament with an expert opinion on this presentation and risk outline? With regards to housing, I have a few questions for the Minister of Rami. How many board members are presently on the SMHDF board? And has the government assigned its required board representative? There have been many complaints about the lack of maintenance at the Housing Foundation. The Housing Foundation have sufficiently funded to carry out its required maintenance on the homes in Belvedere, Dutch Quarter, Hope Estate, The Keys, and Cold Bay. Does the Housing Foundation have sufficient funding to complete the required maintenance and renovations? And will government have to play a role in this to ensure sufficient funding for these repairs? There has been many complaints regarding the completed renovations of the towers, in particular leaks. What is the proposed solution for this, and who will be funding these solutions? How far along is the government with the completion and signing of the performance agreement with the requirement for the funding of the construction of the proposed new units in Hope Estate? And what will be the financial impact for the government based on this new agreement? Has this been taken into account in the budget and the projected budget for the next 4 years? Has government established its housing policy, which is also required for the funding of the new construction of the units of Hope Estate? If not, how far along is this process, and what is the projected financial impact on the government, to the government on this, and has it been taken into account in this year's budget and the projected budget for the next 4 years? The last two budgets increased subsidy for 782,000 guilders. And correct me if I'm wrong, this value was never transferred to the Housing Foundation, even while it was increased. It was never transferred. I could be wrong. Maybe the minister can correct me there through you, Madam Chair Lady. What was the value transferred to the Housing Foundation per year in each of the last 2 years? And what was the difference not transferred to the Housing Foundations for the subsidy for the tenants? What was done with the difference between what was budgeted and what was transferred to the Housing Foundation? Has a subsidy policy been established by the government to ensure effective and efficient housing subsidy assistance? And has an operational audit within the last 4 years been completed to ensure effective and efficient service to the housing tenants and population at large who have requested housing for so long, over so many years? So if so, what are the results? If not, how is the government ensuring fair, efficient, and effective treatment to the tenants and the general populations? There is a housing shortage crisis on this island, leading to a high rents, and yes, the rent is still too high. And many persons living in what is called a state of hidden homelessness. Other than the NRPB project for 88 units, does the government have a plan for housing development to address this housing shortage crisis? And if so, is this addressed in the budget and the projected budget for the next 4 years? If not, how does the government propose to address this crisis, given that the World Bank report indicated that there is a minimum of 6,000 housing units shortage on the island? My Next question will go and to the last minister, this only minister, the Prime Minister. I have a few questions for the Prime Minister, and I'll be ending my line of questions through you, Madam Chair Lady. And it starts with the trust fund. The Sint Maarten Trust Fund, in collaboration with the World Bank, initiated the Building Resilience Report, focusing on the recovery of Sint Maarten's tourism sector from 2020 to 2022. The report identified 3 main challenges hindering the competitiveness of tourism in the tourism industry. And the 3 points are the non-competitive, low-yield core product for the stayover market, restrictive business environment, ineffective regulatory regime, unattractive investment climate, weak infrastructure, and unappealing public spaces. And the last one is limited capacity for workforce. Addressing these challenges is seen by residents and industry members as crucial for enhancing productivity, increasing resilience, and ensuring wider benefits for both residents and visitors to Sint Maarten. The project outlined various strategies and actions to tackle these issues. Based on this, and through you, Madam Chair Lady, I would like to ask the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs the following questions. What percentage of the proposed actions outlined in the Building Resilience Project has been completed? Could the Prime Minister provide a list of completed actions and those that remain outstanding and explain why they have not been completed yet? Are there funds allocated for all actions stipulated in the report Tourism Recovery Action Plan? If so, are these allocations detailed in the country packages and or in the 2024 budget? Can the Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, please specify where these allocations are reflected in the budget? How do the country packages address any of the specific challenges highlighted in the report, such as improving the competitiveness of the stayover market, enhancing the core product, improving the business environment and infrastructure, and addressing workforce limitations? Could the Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair Lady, provide an update on the progress made in enhancing regulatory frameworks, improving infrastructure, and creating more attractive public spaces as outlined in the report? How do these efforts contribute to the overall goal of recovering resilience? And can the Prime Minister please provide an update on the Gaming Authority, which also falls under the country packages? What is the current status of this? I am assuming she would have to speak to the Minister of TIAD, but yeah, we'll see. And what is the current status of the Competition Authority? What measures are being implemented to enhance the capacity of the workforce in all sectors, including tourism, and what are the plans for training and skill development programs? Similarly, how are the aforementioned reflected in the country packages and 2024 budget allocation? How is the government collaborating with relevant stakeholders, including the private sector and the international partners, to ensure effective implementation of the strategies outlined in the Building Resilience Report? During the Parliament meeting on March 7, the Honorable Prime Minister presented insights on the fuel clause and its relationship with throughput fees. The fuel clause and the price of the electricity are crucial points in our country's budget, particularly within the context of energy policy, economic development, environmental sustainability. I therefore would like to pose the following question regarding this. While a throughput fee was previously established to support expansion, is this the sole reason for GB's fuel clause? Additionally, the Port of Sint Maarten depends on the throughput fee, constituting approximately 15% of its total revenues. Despite this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, despite this dependence, there has been no adjustments to the fee in over a decade. Despite inflationary pressures and rising business costs, and in light of these discussions, I have several questions that require clarifications. Could the Prime Minister please provide a detailed explanation on how the fuel clause is calculated, including its respective components? Additionally, could the Prime Minister please illustrate this calculation in terms of US dollar cents and percentages? Has there been an increase in the fuel throughput fee over the past 10 years? How many fuel suppliers on the Dutch side supply the harbor, airport, marinas, etc.? Could the Prime Minister provide a list? Is GB reliant on the price sensitivity of its suppliers? How has their prices increased over the last decade? Over the past 10 years, has GB increased its fuel clause? If so, could the Prime Minister explain which component have experienced increases? Does GB possess any depot tanks that would enable them to purchase a fuel in bulk in better rates? If not, what is the reason for this? Does GB have a storage facility? Simply put, yes or no. And why does GB need to refuel its tanks periodically? Could this be due to a storage issue? Now, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I was made to understand that both the police station and the hospital are on the grid, on GB. And why not the airport? Why not the harbor? Why not Telem? Because if Telem was on, maybe we wouldn't have the issue that we had a couple days ago. Is this due to a capacity problem? If not, why not? And has GB considered maybe expanding the grid? And how much would something like this cost? Lastly, with regard to corporate governance, how does the current regulatory framework, including corporate governance laws and codes, ensure transparency, accountability, and ethical behavior within government corporation? And what measures are being taken by the Council of Ministers to ensure compliance and these regulations and codes, particularly in view of recent corporate judicial cases, failures in most government-owned companies, and involving industry practices? Kindly indicate whether there are any changes to the corporate governance law. If so, what are these changes? Also, are there any changes to the corporate governance code? If so, what are those changes? And are there any changes to the corporate governance council? If so, what are these changes? And my last and final question for the afternoon. What is the current status of Sint Maarten's membership with CARIBCOM? Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Grisha Heiliger Martin. And we continue with our members of parliament posing their questions to the ministers who presented their budgets earlier today. I now give the floor to MP Roseberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Secretary General, public present, and the ones viewing and listening online, my colleagues, MPs, and the honorable ministers. Thank you for your presentation. I have the following questions. I would like to start with the Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair. Based on the budget, over the years, the communication budget has been consistently, in the past, been underestimated. And my question is the VoIP system now fully operational to potentially reduce the telephone costs? The electricity budget has also been underestimated, and the question in regards to that, has the facility management developed a plan to address the high energy prices? That were my questions for the Prime Minister. And I have one question for the Minister of Finance, through you, Madam Chair. I noticed on the budget that there was an allocation of 50,000 for training of all tax office workers, but under account 43480, there's an amount of 81,000. So what is this additional amount for, if that can be clarified? Then I have my questions for the Ministry of Justice, through you, Madam Chair. Why is there a significant difference in salary budgets between the Landsverordening, the police force, the custom officers and coast guards, especially considering the fact that the Landsverordening is the smallest organization? What justifies this big difference? Regarding the events, the Justice Week, the anti-counterfeit conferences, why is there a substantial budget allocation of 250,000 guilders for those for those conferences. Can a specific breakdown be provided for each section? I have seen on the budget several policies and funds for projects like combating human smuggling and also other crimes. But my question is, what funds have been made available to address the juvenile crimes? And then I'm relating to the different school fights and also the mental health in connection to that. So what has been budgeted for that? Because I haven't seen that on the budget. And is there a collaboration with the Ministry of Education, the ECYSA, and the FESA in connection with the mental health aspect? In connection, I continue with the questions for justice through you, Madam Chair. In connection to our upcoming events, Carnival, with Carnival approaching and the various activities organized by different promoters, and considering the understaffed police force, how will the safety of our community be safeguarded? Today's newspaper is pretty clear in regards to the recent incident, the Causeway jump up, where there were several stabbings and also a shooting. How will the safety of Carnival with the understaffed police and many events be ensured this year? Is it correct that there will be extra officers brought in from the other islands? If so, how many and for how long? The dates connected to that. What is the cost? And where are these funds coming from? Where in the budget can I find those amounts? Because when I looked at tijdelijk politie personnel, I saw that there was no money allocated there. It says 0, so I would like that to be clarified as well. In the budget, in connection to the training of the custom and immigration workers, I'm not seeing that on the budget, while I'm seeing that there has been training for the police force, prison, and Landsverordening. There's a budget for that. So why none for the custom and immigration workers, while I am aware that there's a new class that has started training? So where are those funds coming from? And then I'm referring to the custom workers. My other question for justice: what are the expenses related to the GVO? And why has the allocation increased to the amount of 204,000 guilders? Why has the budget for the victim support services increased to 450,000 guilders, 150,000 more than last year, especially since the victim support services haven't started as yet, unless I have missed that part? Why hasn't there been a budget allocated for the youth detention center? Also there I'm seeing an amount of 0. And then on the other hand, for the counterfeit events and the Justice Week, there's 250,000 guilders available. So I'm trying to understand for the juvenile prisoners or detention center, there's no amount available. What are the funds allocated for upgrading the police station, particularly to address the issues like mold, for example? Where in the budget can I find the budgeted amount for the rehabilitation and resocialization efforts? I have heard about that a lot, but I have not seen that on the budget. But maybe I have missed it. These were my questions for now for the Minister of Justice. Now I continue through you, Madam Chair, for the Minister of ECYSA. I noticed in the budget that issues in connection to period poverty, that there have been projects connected to that on the budget, but what funds have been allocated for addressing, again, the juvenile crime, and then in connection to the school fights and mental health? Is there a collaboration with the justice sector and with the Minister of VSA? That is in connection to the for the Minister of Education. Then I continue the Minister of VSA, are there, and if so, funds allocated to address the mental health in schools specifically, and in schools and also in the justice system, and then also in the general public. So those three sectors, for example, via the different help desks, and if so, where can I find that on the budget? There's also a significant difference in project and activity budgets under account 43489, increasing from 50,000 in 2023 to 173,000 in 2024. Can these activities be specified? Why isn't there a budget allocated for the social development project and activities? I saw that there was a zero amount, so I would like that to be clarified. What funds are allocated for the various community help desks, and where in the budget can I find that amount? Where in the budget can I find the budget for developing mental health legislation? So that was it for Mr. Fesa. Through you, Madam Chair, questions for the Minister of TIAT. I think my colleague, MP Hiler Martin, already went into that, but just to clarify that matter, where in the budget, I went through it, really small letters, but I managed, but I haven't seen it. Where can I find the budget in connection to the promoting the orange and blue economy? And also, is there specifically a collaboration in connection to those initiatives with the Ministry of TIAT and ECYSA in the schools, for example, to promote the orange economy? Then where in the budget the promotion, I saw during the presentation that it was mentioned, the agriculture, but where can I find that in the budget and under which category? And is there a connection with the Ministry of Education to also bring that agriculture in the schools? So if I have missed that, I heard it, but where can I find it? I would like to see and read. Then I also saw in the presentation in connection to the 97 bus permits and the 142 new tax permits that were given. I assume, but maybe it can be clarified, this was done in a year period. So can it please be clarified, the policy in connection to that and also the legal basis in connection to that, so that I can from there on see if I have further questions in connection to that matter. And my last question through you, Madam Chair, for the Minister of FROMI. It was a short summary, and based on that summary which I have received and in connection to the budget, I have seen that there was 6 million capex investment in resurfacing 11 main roads. And then my question is, what policy is there in place to mitigate the groundwater problems under most of those roads? Has this been budgeted? If so, where? Because it would be unfortunate if the roads will be fixed, but we will have future potential problems if the water issue is not tackled. I think those were my questions for now. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Roosburg. And we now continue, and I invite MP Christophe Emmanuel to take the floor. MP Emmanuel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Honorable Clerk, the Honorable Ministers, the wonderful people of Sint Maarten, my honorable colleagues, and everyone who's here in the Tribune. Good afternoon. Madam Chair, I would like to start off with the Minister of TIAT, because I only have a few questions for him. 1 or 2 questions I have for the Minister of TIAT. Madam Chair, I don't know if you, when was the last time you took a stroll, or any one of my colleagues, on Front Street. Madam Chair, we are graced with a number of concrete benches on Front Street. Now, Madam Chair, I mean, Lord, man, not even a little bit of paint? Just a concrete bench? That's all we get? I mean, no kind of sprucing up? Madam Chair, I drove through there the other day, and all it is like a concrete bench. That's all it is. No, Madam Chair, I can understand the initiative. I can understand the idea. I can understand the reason behind it. So many people walking, passing, moving. You may get tired, you want to sit down. But Lord, man, we could have dabbed it up with a little bit of paint to make it look nice. I mean, a little beautification or pretty it up, Madam Chair. So through you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of TIAT if that is the final display of the concrete benches, if that's it. Because, Madam Chair, if that is the case, then move them. Because it don't look good. And in our tongue, T look good at all. T look good. T look good. So I have a suggestion for the Honorable Minister, Madam Chair. But paint it in the Sint Maarten flag, our national prestige, you know? Paint it in flags of the Caribbean islands, the different ones and them coming down. Paint it in the Dutch flag, the French flag, the American flag. Paint them in different colors, no? So it shows the diversity and the culture of our people in this. We have Dominicans, Anguillians, Kititians, Trinidadians, Jamaicans, Guyanese. They're all here in Sint Maarten. And then coming off of those ships, Americans and so many other different people come to this little island. A little welcoming. So when they're passing, hey, look my flag on the bench. Something that makes it look different. How it is right now, not only is it too many of them, but it's just like, it just there. And a few of them done cracking already. So I would like to know also through you, Madam Speaker, to the Honorable Minister, is there a fix and repair plan from whoever was contracted to do those concrete benches? That's why I say I only have a few questions for the Honorable Minister of TIAT. It don't look good. Team matching. Team matching at all. I mean, nice it up for us, man. Do something. Or I should just leave it for the next incoming Minister of TIAT then, if that's the case. But for right now, the pace where we're going, I know when that's going to happen because it's kind of crawling and the date's coming up. But I'm saying to you who's there right now, put a little paint on it. Do something with it. Get the artists who want us paint up the cultural center and make it look nice. Please. And also, the next question to TIAT, did the managing director of the airport, was his contract extended? If yes, for how long? Those are my questions for the Minister of TIAT, Madam Chair Lady. Like I said, I didn't have much for him. I want to move on, Madam Chair, to the Minister of Finance. But Madam Chair, for me, this is a serious issue. And I have serious trepidations, Madam Chair. I'm very nervous. Very, very, very nervous. And anyone who knows, and when I speak about this issue, they can see my concern, Madam Chair. I honestly feel we are going to lose Mullet Bay. I feel it, Madam Chair. And why? Because we are crawling on the matter of buying Mullet Bay. Madam Chair, I believe the government of Sint Maarten should purchase the property of Mullet Bay. Don't dingle-dangle too much with what is going on. Buy it, Madam Chair. So because of that, Madam Chair, I would like to bring up the motion that was passed in Parliament, 9 for and 2 against, to the Honorable Minister of Finance to ask him, look at it in its consideration. Madam Chair, it says here the Parliament of Sint Maarten, in its meeting of today, Friday, January the 20th, 2023, considering that the people, economy, and overall economic development of Sint Maarten has suffered due to the destruction caused to the Mullet Bay property by the hurricane in 1995. That the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten, CBCS, has appointed 2 directors to restore order at Sun Resort and to initiate the process of selling and or developing Mullet Bay. That the geographic area of Mullet Bay property has historic importance for Sint Maarten, and that responsible economic development is crucial for the economy and the ecology of Sint Maarten. That the Parliament of Sint Maarten has started a parliamentary inquiry with a goal to investigate the property and the present possible solution. That the Parliament of Sint Maarten has approved, by means of the inquiry, the analysis of various actions has started in parliamentary inquiry. Proposals including the expropriation and first right of refusal for the acquisition of Mullet Bay property, for which the final report can serve as a premise for planned actions. That some solutions could include that Sint Maarten as shareholder can be granted the right of first refusal to purchase the Mullet Bay property at a fair and competitive market price. That the government of Sint Maarten and the CBCS could negotiate feasible payment terms that potentially span over a period of 15 to 20 years. That Sint Maarten has the option to provide its shares in the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten as a security to guarantee the payment arrangement. That the revenue generated by the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten for Sint Maarten by means of the 1% foreign exchange tax can serve as security to the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten, further guaranteeing that Sint Maarten meets its payment obligations for the purchase of Mullet Bay property. That with the purchase of the Mullet Bay property, Sint Maarten would be able to protect the beach, build adequate access roads, align the beach and proper parking, and ensure that Mullet Bay is indisputably a public beach for the people of Sint Maarten to enjoy. Declares that the interests of Sint Maarten and its people are always paramount and included in this discussion regarding that the sale of Mullet Bay property and all options are explored. Resolves that as shareholder of the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten, the government of Sint Maarten, via its Minister of Finance, Artwell Arian, makes every effort that approval of any potential sale of the Mullet Bay property is delayed at least until June 2023, in which time the parliamentary inquiry into Mullet Bay property on Sint Maarten is expected to be completed. For the government of Sint Maarten to make every possible effort to ensure that the interest of Sint Maarten is paramount in any decision made related to the Mullet Bay property. That the Mullet Bay Commission in Parliament, with the support of the Secretariat, expedite the completion of this assignment and present its final report within 4 months. And it goes over to the order of the day. Madam Chair, this is a motion that was presented. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of Finance, because the last time he was in here trying to explain dividend and where dividend come from and what dividend is, it wasn't sounding too mathing, Madam Chair. The maths wasn't really adding up. But like I said, we will leave that for a next time. But Madam Chair, like I said through you, I am seriously nervous about this property. And because, Madam Chair, I have seen things happen in this country where we have sat back and we have allowed Caruso to roll in here and take up computers, cars, benches, chairs, even the wall paint from the post office, and they went with it, Madam Chair, and we had nothing to say. We said nothing. Why? Because, oh yeah, Caruso big and they own this and there's a Caruso come. It was all sort of different stories. But who lost? St. Maarten. St. Maarten workers, St. Maarten people lost, Madam Chair. The central bank, majority of the central bank is owned by Curaçao. Madam Chair, the majority of it. And we continue to sit back and say, well, let me wait and see what's going to happen or what they are going to do. A motion was passed unanimously in Curaçao for the exception of the Chem Party, Madam Chair, where it was tabled that they should start to sell the assets of ANIA. And what is one of the assets of ANIA, Madam Chair? Mullet Bay. Mullet Bay. So I'm asking through you, Madam Speaker, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, beside what was told to us in terms of paying off the debt of ANIA and what is St. Maarten portion, whatever, do you have a concrete plan in purchasing Mullet Bay, Madam Chair? In addition to that, Madam Chair, now I want to stick to the Minister of Finance also, because, Madam Chair, I have a few more questions to ask him. Madam Chair, if you have taken note recently, the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Maarten is parading throughout St. Maarten by the community centers, holding different events talking about the Caribbean Guilder. Madam Chair, they even have a calendar out with a timeline, Madam Chair. It says the new Caribbean Guilder, March 31st, 2025. And here's the timeline, Madam Chair. March 31st, 2025, the new Caribbean Guilder enters circulation. June 30th, 2025, last day to make cash payments with the Antillean Guilder. It goes on to say, Madam Chair, March 31st, 2026, last date to exchange Antillean commercial banks, to exchange your guilders at the commercial banks. And then it says, March 31st, 2055, last date to exchange Antillean guilders at the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Maarten. That's the timeline that they have circulating. So my question, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, shouldn't the Parliament pass the law first in accepting this? And if the Parliament of St. Maarten rejected or reject the Caribbean Guilder, what happens to all of this that the Central Bank is doing, Madam Chair Lady? In addition to that, I would like to also ask the Honorable Minister of Finance, what is his position on dollarization? What is his position on dollarization to the Honorable Minister of Finance? Also, Madam Chair, sticking with the Minister of Finance, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of Finance, does the country of St. Maarten collect taxes or monies from Robbie's Lottery and Star Casinos? Do they collect money from them in terms of taxes? And if the answer is yes, because, Madam Chair, most likely the answer is yes, I would like to ask the government of St. Maarten, I would like to ask the Minister of Finance, and also, Madam Chair, the Minister of Justice, do they consider that money to be part of money laundering, Madam Chair? Do they consider that money to be part of money laundering, Madam Chair? Why am I saying that, Madam Chair? Because to this date, Madam Chair Lady, those entities cannot have a bank account in this country because the revenues from those entities that was given a license to operate in this country is considered money laundering. Madam Chair, it's considered money laundering. Madam Chair, to me, it's absurd. I can't put it together. So, the country of Sint Maarten issued these entities operational license to operate. When they generate this money, that money, Madam Chair, they are using that money to pay taxes. They are paying taxes to the government of Sint Maarten with this money. But Madam Chair, when they take this same money and go to a bank to bank it, you can't get a bank account because this money is considered money laundering. So, Madam Chair, to you, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, at which stage does the money changes its description from good to pay taxes, but considered money laundering to be put into a bank account? At which stage does it change, Madam Chair? I would like to know. Also, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of Finance, what is considered money laundering? What is considered money laundering, Madam Chair? I would like to know, through you, Madam Speaker, is a prepaid credit card company requires, does a prepaid credit card company requires a operational license from the Central Bank of Curacao and Sint Maarten to operate in Sint Maarten? Do they need one? I would like to know, Madam Chair, from the Honorable Minister of Finance. Madam Chair Lady, going through the budget. Now, this question is for the Council of Ministers because, Madam Chair, it says here, when I look at the budget and it comes to agriculture, I see a figure. I would like to know, how did they come to this figure? How did they come to this figure? How did they calculate that figure when it comes to agriculture? I have said it, Madam Chair, during the campaign, over on the radio. I've said it over and over. Madam Chair, when it comes to agriculture, Sint Maarten need another ministry. And that ministry is the Ministry of Agriculture. We can say whatever we want to say. Put money aside, little side gardening, do this. Madam Chair, if you don't have the ministry to push, to initiate, Madam Chair, to grow our agriculture base, all the initiative and the money you put aside means nothing. Yes, we need another ministry. Politically, that'll be a good thing too, Yeah, another ministry, Yeah. Madam Chair Lady, that's what we need. It is time it's time, Madam Chair, that we take some serious decision in this country that's going to work for us. They have a figure, Madam Chair, in the budget, and they're saying it's for agriculture. But how did you calculate it? How did you calculate it? Madam Chair, with the land for agriculture, who's going to get this money? With a sheep, with a cow, with a goat. Madam Chair, what are you agriculturing that you put aside this money for? How are you going to do it? What are you doing it with? Who's going to push it? And Madam Chair, but you can't have agriculture if you don't have a culture. Madam Chair Lady, you can't. You can't. A good initiative, I think is good. I think it's good. They were listening to me during the campaign, so they put something for agriculture. They're good. But Madam Chair, wouldn't it have been better to have a method to fund it as a percentage of the national budget, Madam Chair Lady? Like that now, that same 27 million, because they're going to ask and they're going to say, yeah, but to create a whole new ministry, you need money. A whole new ministry. I would like to ask, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, do you have an idea? Can you guess? Can you assume? Can you put figures together what it would cost the country St. Maarten to operate, to run, and to finance a new Ministry of Agriculture? Madam Chair Lady. Okay, Madam Chair, I want to leave it there for now when it comes to the Minister of Finance. And I would like to go over to the Minister of Justice. I only have a few questions for the Minister of Justice. Madam Chair, and it can also work also, Madam Chair Lady, to the Minister of Finance too as well, so they both can tag team with giving the answers. I would like to know, Madam Speaker, through you, to the Honorable Minister of Finance or the Minister of Justice, when you are fined here in St. Maarten, so for example, the police stop you and look, listen, you're 10, we fine you. Where does that money go? Because it's not going in the general coffers of government. Where does it go? The reason why I'm asking that question, Madam Chair, because I asked it softly the last time when the Minister of Justice was here concerning a police officer. And it was made known to me because of what came out of a report from the prosecutor's office, that there's an account at Arco Bank that fines are deposited in that account. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister of Finance or the Minister of Justice, are you aware of it? And if yes, how much money is there and who have access to that account? Madam Chair Lady, I would like a breakdown in the last 4 years, because we have the longest serving government. They lasted 4 years, so I want 4 years, Madam Chair. I want it. Attached to that also, Madam Chair, the crime fund. The crime fund. I want 4 years breakdown of the access to that money too, as well as what it was spent on, Madam Chair, in the last 4 years. And how much do we have now presently, Madam Chair, when it comes to the crime fund? So the question is, this account at Arco Bank, who have access to it? Also for the crime fund, who has access to it? And in the last 4 years, what has that money been spent on? Now, Madam Chair, I got permission, so I'm going to say it as it is. Madam Chair, Robbie DeSantos had a case against him called the Bentu case. I cannot speak about Bentu. Bentu. That's what they're telling me. Oh, you're Rubians and Caroselinians, oh, yeah. Bentu, if that's the correct pronunciation. Madam Chair, he was to pay a fine of a substantial amount. Now, I could give you the amount, but I ain't going to do it. I ain't going to say it, but there's a lot. It's in the millions, Madam Chair. But, Madam Chair, now, one would say, oh, yeah, well, it was done that way because the headquarters is in Curacao. But, Madam Chair, the case was here. And what happened, Madam Chair, he was given a bank account in Curacao to deposit that money. I would like to know if St. Maarten received anything from it. What was St. Maarten percentage or St. Maarten's share from that fine? From that fine that was given to him and the bank account that he was given to deposit that money on in Curacao. Madam Chair, I have a problem. And I keep saying it all the time. Madam Chair, let me say it this way, so my Curacao and Maruba people don't misconstrue what I am saying. Madam Chair, my great-grandfather from Aruba, my grandfather and grandmother from Aruba, My father from Aruba. You see my genealogy, you see my lineage? From Aruba. Aunt, uncle, cousins from Curacao. A lot of family. Madam Chair, I have more property and everything in Aruba than what I have here in Sint Maarten. In Curacao than what I have here in Sint Maarten. Boutique San Nicolas, the old hotel, the Wolfman, all those things. That's my uncle, that's my great-grandfather. Madam Chair lady. But Madam Chair, my concern is Sint Maarten. Sint Maarten. Only Sint Maarten. I want everything that belongs to me. I want it. I want it all, Madam Chair. Every cent, and I want it now. I want it. Every cent, every dollar, every gift, everything that goes to those islands that Sint Maarten got share in, I want it. I want it all. And I want it here in Sint Maarten. So I would like to ask through you, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of Finance and Justice, go and find my money. And when do you think you can go and get it? I want answers. Because, Madam Chair, he was given an account in Curacao to deposit the money. Where's Sint Maarten share? What did we get? What did we get, Madam Chair? I want my money. And I want it now. I got to build schools, sport parks, Madam Chair, roads, the railings by the hospital all bent up, beat up. I can't get a roof on yet at Rahul Village. Marie Laurence look like what could save me. I need money, Madam Chair. And what we continue to do here in this country, give it all away. Or leave people take advantage of us. Or other countries take advantage of us. Yes, Madam Chair. Because we are always the one in solidarity. We are always the one understanding everyone else. Madam Chair, when it comes to Aruba, Evelyn Weever Cruz don't concern what goes on in Sint Maarten, you know. When it comes to Curacao, Pisas don't concern what goes on in Sint Maarten. So I would like to know, what is that account that was given to Mr. De Santos to deposit those millions that he was given in a fine? I want to know what the account is. I also want to know, Madam Chair, what was Sint Maarten percentage? How much did come to Sint Maarten? How much of it belongs to us here in Sint Maarten? If anything was deposited in our crime fund here in Sint Maarten. Madam Chair, I want to know. I want to know. As we go on, Madam Chair, I would like to ask, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of VSR. Madam Chair, you see, when you're in opposition, Madam Chair, everything the government bring is bad. Everything the government bring, tea no good. But when you're in office and when you're in government, all of a sudden, certain things does look a little different. All of a sudden, Madam Chair, it does look a little different. It does look a little like, maybe this song kind of good. I would like to ask through you, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Minister of VSR, explain to me a little bit about this Utley Scholarship. I want to know. I want to know about it. I want to know about it in depth, Madam Chair, and who all can access this scholarship. No, yeah, he had a Utley. Madam Chair, I would like to ask the minister if he's aware of what I'm talking about, because I see people, okay, he's shaking his head, that's confirmation. I would like to know, Madam Chair, who all have access to the Utley Scholarship. In addition to that, Madam Chair, why everything must name Utley? Why? Utley Care, Utley Scholarship, Utley everything? I mean, come now. But I would like to know, Madam Chair, also, where is the funding for the Utley Scholarship coming from? Madam Chair, where is it coming from? And I believe it was linked to NEPA. I stand to be corrected on it. I would like to know, Madam Chair, if it's also open to other educational institutions. Because, Madam Chair, now that we in office, that idea don't sound too bad after all. Madam Chair, they don't sound too bad. Madam Chair. That got a ring to it. Madam Chair, so I really don't know what to say about the Minister of Education. But don't worry, I can fix those things, so I can leave that so. But Madam Chair, I want to, so the only one I left the Prime Minister for last on purpose. Okay? And now, Madam Chair, I can go back and forth with the Honorable Prime Minister. Back and forth. Madam Chair. But I have a nagging issue. And it's the GB issue, Madam Chair. It's the GB issue. And the chair, and Madam Chair, through you, the Honorable Prime Minister would say, yeah, but corporate governance and this and that. But Madam Chair, I don't know. Let me see how I could put it. Madam Chair, concerning the hack, the Honorable Prime Minister said, no, the second one was a breach. So, Madam Chair, I am trying to say to the Honorable Prime Minister, don't believe what GEBE is telling you. Let me explain why, Madam Chair. Because at the end of it, it makes you look like the liar. Because of the information that you receive from GEBE. So, Madam Chair, the last time the Honorable Prime Minister was here concerning GEBE, I said I was going to read the executive summary, Madam Chair. And it's a reason for that. Because then I would like the Honorable Prime Minister, Madam Chair, to, to go back to GEBE and ask them, Madam Chair, if it's true. Because, Madam Chair, the Honorable Prime Minister is reading and relating to us the information that she gets from GEBE. And I am saying to the Honorable Prime Minister, 1, they're lying to you. 2, they're setting you up. 3, it makes you look bad. Now, for me, I could care either way. I will just pong on this issue. But, Madam Chair, I am saying to you, because I have questions after this, to the Honorable Prime Minister, go to GEBE and ask them for the report, if they haven't given it to you already. This is the executive summary, Madam Chair, in terms of what happened at GEBE with the second hack. Madam Chair, it says, on July 18, 2023, the digital infrastructure of NVGEBE was compromised. A threat actor gained unauthorized access to the network by exploiting a leak or stolen domain administrator accounts, VPN credentials. Subsequently, the actor maneuvered literally within the network, acquiring administrative permission, thereby attaining complete control over the networked devices. The domain administrators' accounts were permitted VPN access, enabling them to make alterations to the network. The absence of monitoring and alerting services detect unusual activities, XDR, related to domain administrator accounts allow the threat actor to operate without detection. Madam Chair, it goes on to say, ESET NL CDC Cyber Defense Center team attempted to coordinate a swift response based on detection triggered on system Bright Print NV GEBE Print Local. By this in place, ESET monitoring and detention solution, MDR. However, there was a significant delay in reaching the necessary personnel. During the interval, ESET isolated several systems that remain uncompromised. Here comes the part, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, by the time an appropriate response could be organized, and this is it, ransomware, not no breach, not no kind of breach, not no sort of a breach, Madam Chair. Ransomware had already impacted numerous servers. By Wednesday morning, July the 19th, 2023, at 7:30 a.m., the focus shifted from impact analysis of the ransomware, not no breach, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Prime Minister, or sort of a breach. No, ransomware. To the execution of the essential remediation measures required to restore the IT environment. Between Wednesday morning, July 19th, 2023, and Friday afternoon, July the 21st, 2023, the first steps to recover of the recovery procedure was successfully completed. All data from NetPro's data center located at Bonaire was retrieved and brought on premises facility at Sint Maarten to initiate the restoration process. Scheduled by Friday evening, July the 21st, 2023, by Sunday afternoon, July the 23rd, 2023, a majority of the critical systems has been restored to operational status with access granted after conducting a comprehensive antivirus scan, installing the latest. So you see, Madam Chair, this is the executive report. This is what comes from the IT department. Huh? This is what comes from them. But every time you ask the Honorable Prime Minister, when GEBE is there, they say a breach. Where in the executive report from GEBE, Madam Chair, does it say a breach? I would like to ask that to the Honorable Prime Minister. Also, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Honorable Prime Minister, do you have access to this executive summary? And if you don't have access to it, ask GEBE for it. And I will be kind enough now, Madam Chair, to get it to the Honorable Prime Minister. So I would also like to ask through you, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Prime Minister, if the majority of the crucial data and infrastructure was put back in place, how much now is lacking to be replaced? How much now is still compromised by the second ransomware attack that happened at GEBE, Madam Chair Lady? And also, Madam Chair, coming on to the end of my questions to the Honorable Prime Minister. Madam Chair, in the name of the kingdom that Sint Maarten is part of, we are considered or part of genocide. Madam Chair, the Kingdom of the Netherlands is the #1 European country supplying Israel with arms. Supplying Israel with arms, Madam Chair, with the genocide and displacement of the Palestinians in Gaza and Palestine. So I would like to ask the Honorable Prime Minister, Madam Chair, when you fly to the UN and you go to all those places and you sit down and you see across the table the name tag of Israel, how do you feel? I would also like to ask, would you take a stance similar to what Curacao did when they told the kingdom, or they told the Netherlands, do not put Curacao in your discussions as part of the kingdom when you are conducting these sort of atrocities? I thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady.
MP Christophe Emmanuel, thank you very much for your questions. And we continue with members of parliament, and I invite MP Marlin to take the floor. MP Marlin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. To my colleague MPs, good afternoon. And to my ministers, thank you. For the listening audience and the viewing audience, I say welcome. My questions today is directly to the Minister of Finance. I'll save my other questions for the next round. My question to the Honorable Minister of Finance, especially now, I mean exactly now, after hearing from my colleague MP, that there won't be a new government anytime soon, seeing that the formation of this new government is taking a rather slow course. What are the risks involved in not approving this budget? Which key investments and our new hires, projects, and programs will be impacted? Confirm to me, if the budget isn't approved, that a 2% COLA won't be paid. Also, if approved, will it be retroactively paid to January 2024? When employees own stock in the company they work for, like Tesla, the interest becomes aligned with those of shareholders. This can lead to increased motivation and dedication to the company's success, as employees directly benefit from improvement in the company's performance and stock value. So, to the Honorable Minister of Finance, my question to you in regards to Weever, what percentage of the shares will go towards employees? I also like the innovation of implementing a 32-hour work week and the pilot project the Minister of Finance implemented, and looking forward to the results of the exit survey of a 32-hour work week. This could potentially increase employee morale and productivity. You mentioned that you did this for a department. Do you have any other plans for the whole ministry and our government? These were my questions to the Minister of Finance today. I look forward for tomorrow, where I will have lots more questions. I thank you.
Thank you, MP Marlin. And we continue, and I now invite MP La Cruz to take the floor. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon to one and all, Madam Chair, my colleagues, and my ministers that are diligently awaiting me as the last speaker, and anyone else in the Tribune. I have a couple questions, and I'm not as dramatic and emotional as much as some of the other MPs. So it might sound a little boring, but I like it, because I'd like to touch the topics at point. For Minister of Finance, question number one, what types of capital good investments are included in the 2024 budget, and how much of the total budgeted amount relates to investments that were already planned in 2023? Question number two, are there any major risks or uncertainties that could impact the revenue or expenditure projections in the 2024 budget? What assumptions, question number 3, what assumptions or considerations are mentioned regarding things like inflation, economic growth, projections, or any other factors that could influence the budget projections? Question number 4, can we get an update on the virtual assets ordinance? Where is that law now? And what is the timeline to have that in Parliament? Question number 5, how much plates were left behind every year after being printed for the last 5 years, especially in public transport? And that question is a little, comes from both sides, for the Minister of TIAT, but also the Minister of Finance. For the Minister of ECYS, I've heard all the plans and all the achievements for the ministry, but I'd like to elaborate a little on something else. I've heard all kinds of plans, but what I'm missing is actually a plan to take care of what is most important, and that is the teachers. I've heard almost nothing or nothing at all that would actually benefit teachers and soften their workload in the schools. Question number 2, how many colleges in the US have MOUs with Sint Maarten in relation to grants, and how much students do we have right now in this study year 2023-2024 making use of these? Question number 3, which are these colleges? Question number 4, are all these MOUs up to date? Question number 5, how much does government give organizations like Nature Foundation for advices every year? And how much students do we have right now outside studying? Studies, for example, like marine biology. Question number 6, we have a few medical schools here on the island established on Sint Maarten. How much students have been granted scholarships to study in these medical schools on Sint Maarten? For the Minister of VSA, the Healthy Breakfast Program was a pilot for 3 months with half public schools. Is it the intention to continue this project? Question number 2, what is the update with the Saha Otley Care, as it is important that sole proprietors can receive insurance? Those were my 2 questions for the Minister of VSA. For the Minister of TIAT, I have a lot more, but most would understand why. What is the status of the amount of the cruise calls to our ports? Could you please let us know if the ministry has any plans to increase those calls, and the plan to increase the calls, especially seeing that during the slow season, we have not actually gained any ground with promotions in the Caribbean. Where is the plan to actually do that, promote Sint Maarten in the Caribbean? Because I remember some time back, we would get a lot more tourists from Martinique, Guadeloupe, that would actually come here to shop. So is there a plan for that? A few weeks ago, Parliament, most of us here, and members were invited to the inaugural call of the Icon of the Seas. We were all on that ship, beautiful ship, and the question is, are we fully aware that this ship ran on LNG? And the question comes based on what actually took place in most of the last cruise conferences that we've been to, where the main topic was the possibility to refuel or plug into our grid because of the carbon footprint that is left behind by the cruise ships. I know that a study was done. We have visited ourselves a facility in Puerto Rico where this facility has been run on solely LNG, and there's a request in to government to place a transshipment point here, but also ideas for LNG generators to be able to plug in the cruise ships when they come here on the island. Where are those plans? As this would be a whole new stream of income for the country. Question number 4. And I've always noticed that anything that is negative always gets a life of its own here on the island. But the airport has done a lot of things, and a lot of good things have happened on the airport. So, Minister, could you elaborate a little, give us a little highlight, and put a little smile on our faces on where we were with the airport, where we are today, and when will we be finished with the airport and its reconstruction? This relates mainly to an increase in airlift also. I know we've had a couple meetings with different airlines. Could you also elaborate on that? Question number 6. I am also aware that there was a plan to come to some type of agreement between the kingdom and our islands in the neighborhood with airfare. How far are those plans? Next question. Is the $1 safety fee being collected at the airport? And where are those fees now? Are those available to the ministry? Next question. There are bathrooms in Mullet Bay, and I think, and I would hope that when the building permits were requested, that VRAMI approved these with septics. I am also aware that the plan that was shown in your presentation had also a septic planned in it. The question is, would these restrooms be free, or would the people on the beach have to actually pay to use them? Next question. Has the piece of land been allotted? Has the piece of land been allotted for these bathrooms? On Mullet Bay. Next question. I know there's also a plan for garbages on the boardwalk, Front Street and Back Street. How far is the ministry with that plan? I'm also aware of a tender that went out for palm trees and the replanting of palm trees to beautify the whole Phillipsburg area. How far is government with that plan? Touching the subject of the benches, many might not know but the benches, apart from sitting, they were meant to curb the parking on the sidewalks. How far are we with the plan to get the schools a project to paint them up and make them look pretty? Because I would hate to leave it pass as if there was no plan to do anything with the benches. That's why I'm mentioning it. In your presentation also, my next question, I saw that the revenues of the business licenses have increased. Can you give us an update how long it takes today to get a business license and how much business licenses are still being waited upon now? Then I have two questions that are actually for all ministers. One is, how much has it cost the country in court cases in the last 4 years? Please provide what it costs and if we have won or lost those court cases. And if there's any plan to actually find a mediator and alleviate these costs, as sometimes it seems to be a waste of money. And then my last questions to all ministers: what projects or plans would you urge the incoming government, whenever that might be, according to some of the MPs, to continue or actually finalize, as these are things that have been worked on for the last 4 years, and we've heard a lot about continuation. So let's put your hands where your mouth is and get to work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP La Cruz, for those questions. The ministers, I would now like to add a few questions to those already posed by my colleagues with respect to the draft budget 2024. And I want to start with the Ministry of General Affairs and ask if the draft law to increase the vacation allowance is already in the make. If it's not, when will it be? Currently, the law prescribes a vacation allowance of 6% from every item in the budget 2024. It is evident that there will be, as the Minister of General Affairs has also explained, an increase in this vacation allowance. So where are we where the legislation for this increase is concerned? In a previous setting, the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs referred to plans for the NRPB and made a reference to NRPB 2.0. Can any more information regarding government's vision and intention be shared? Does the government share, on another note, another question, the General Audit Chamber's concerns with respect to the General Pension Fund of St. Maarten? And if so, what is government's plan? I have a request for the Minister of Finance, and that is to consider, and sort of urgently, if possible, making a public budget, a budget which is more user-friendly and understandable for the public in general. This was something that used to be done many, many years ago, even before the country status. And so with all the technology of today, I think it should be a small feat in order to make that possible. Still under the Minister of Finance, in the budget it is mentioned that we have income generating initiatives which are currently going on. I quote that from the budget. I would like to know specifically which these are and with what results thus far. Of course, it is St. Maarten that finances the High Councils of State. And I would like to know whether the proposed budgets in the National Budget 2024 are in line with the budgets as requested by our High Councils of State. If they're not, what is the difference? Still under the Ministry of Finance, a lot has been said about compliance and collection. In fact, in the 2024 draft budget, the taxes in total have been increased compared to the year 2023 budget, at least with about 42 million guilders. So my question in that regard is whether there is any update on the administration of collections and the cleaning up of the so-called prepaid account or accounts. We had a discussion here in Parliament regarding INYA and learned from the Minister of Finance that how this is going to be regulated is going to be through payments of dividend by the central bank. And so my question is, considering that there is a line item in the budget, dividend central bank, with no amount, zero, according to the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin's charter, there should be, and now my word, a profit sharing. So, in other words, after the central bank has done their obligations with respect to reservation creation, the profit, the remaining profit of the bank should come to the countries. We learned from the Minister of Finance that this has never been done. And my question is, why not? Why has the charter of the central bank, the so-called bank statute, why has it never been executed according to Article 40 of the bank charter, where it pertains to paying? In the bank charter, it says profit, but in order to pay shareholders dividend, it is because of the making of profit. So my question is, why, while there is a line item in the budget before us 2024, dividend central bank, no amount has ever been budgeted, and now that a solution has been found for INYA where the dividend of the central bank is concerned, now yes, and not retroactively, beginning when the solution for INYA will be implemented, we are going to be getting dividend from the central bank. And so I would like to have an overview of the profit made by the central bank, what amounts of the profit have been put towards reservations, reserveringen, and so I would like to know what that buildup has been, if any, if there was profit over the years. In 2023, for the Airbnb, an amount of 5 million was budgeted. And my question is, what, if any, of this amount has actually been collected? So in 2023, it was budgeted for 5 million. Was anything collected? On the line item of lottery fees, starting with the actuals of 2022, the budget 2023, and the budget 2024, draft budget 2024, there is one standard amount. So actually collected in 2022, vermoedelijke ontvangsten, as it's called in the budget, for which I would like to have a public budget. But you have 3.06 million under the 3 years. And my question is, so we collected the exact amount that is due from all lottery fees, yes or no? The tourist tax, which was 10 million in 2023 and had to be removed actually because the legislation was not passed, has now, in 2024 draft budget, been increased to 19,350,000 guilders. In fact, what I noticed from this budget here is the column 2023 has not been adjusted according to the amended budget 2023. One would recall that when the budget 2023 was amended in December of 2023, that 10 million guilders tourist tax had to be cancelled, had to be taken out of the budget because no legislation was prepared. But that still is in the column 2023 of this budget before us, one. And in 2024, the same item, tourist tax, has been increased to 19,350,000 guilders. And I would like to know, are we any further with the legislation that would have to underpin these amounts in the budget? I continue with the Minister of Finance, and I have taken note that under the so-called participations of government. Now, the post-participations of government refers to any government-owned or partially owned entity. And there is a report on page 113 of this budget that says basically that the most recent annual reports of these entities are 2019. And I'm going to ask now, is the overview of government-owned or participating in entities, is the report on page 113 that we have received with this budget accurate as far as receiving annual reports, annual accounts from these entities? In the budget again, we see on the page, well, under the chapter of the Ministry of Finance, in any case, an amount under the topic of ENIA for 2.5 million guilders as an expense. Is an expense going to be made in 2024 for ENIA, one? And if it's going to be made, where is then the CBCS dividend amount, according to what we have been told, that the payments to or on behalf of ENIA are going to come from the CBCS dividend amounts? So where is that? We see the expense, so where is the CBCS dividend amount? Where is that put in the budget as a receipt from CBCS? I continue with the Ministry of Justice, and I have noted that there is an amount of 1.5 million guilders for courses and training. Can that be specified somewhat in terms of which courses for which agency or department is this 1.5 million budgeted? One of my colleagues asked it previously, and I want to reiterate that there is an amount for anti-counterfeit conference and human trafficking. And this was also in 2023. Is it that these conferences were not held and will be held in 2024, or were they held in 2023 and will they again be held in 2024 or not? So if that can be explained. We have, what is the explanation of more than a 4 million guilders increase of the operation cost, materiële kosten, under the Staff Bureau of the Ministry of Justice? How is that explained? Of course, I see the amounts, 2 million here, 1.5 million there, but what is the buildup of these amounts? Can we, like we have received in the past, when the issue of payment, retroactive payment to justice workers was a very actual issue, so can we be provided with a global multi-annual calculation of the retroactive payments to justice workers, tied into the budget before us. I would like to receive from the Ministry of Justice an overview of the justice agencies that are shared responsibilities within the Dutch Kingdom. There are several agencies for which we pay part of the cost, and other countries within the Dutch Kingdom also contribute. And could we get an overview of this total cost, Sint Maarten's share, in whether it be customs, whether it be all of them, that we pay a share, where we have a shared responsibility of these services falling under the Ministry of Justice. And then I would like to know, are there any recent reports of the Court of Guardianship, and specifically regarding finding and maintaining foster homes and foster parents? An amount is of approximately 200,000 guilders is in the budget, from what I have understood, and I would like the minister to confirm, or if it is not so, to dismiss the fact that it is very, very difficult to find foster parents and foster homes, and the amounts that are paid to foster parents to look after and take care of children who unfortunately need to go to foster homes, that is hardly enough to take care of children. And I would like the minister's take and view on this. What is the budget for Turning Point based on? Is it their request? Have they requested? What have they requested compared to what they will be getting? And is there any solution in the budget for Turning Point that will deal with, from what I've understood, is a long waiting list for persons to be admitted to Turning Point? Like a colleague of mine, I would like to ask, how should we read that under the Youth Detention Center, there is no amount absolutely budgeted in our 2024 draft budget? I also would like to ask whether the insurance of justice personnel is now regulated. It's a question I asked in the past, and it was at that time, from what I understood, on the verge of being finalized, and I want to know now, is the insurance of justice personnel now regulated? Is it in place? And no further issues with that. I would like an explanation as to the reduction in the VKS subsidy or payment from 800,250 guilders to 650,000 guilders. Why that reduction? Based on what is it? I now go over to ECYS, Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport. In the budget, a reference is made to education reforms, and I would like to know, what are these? What are these very concretely, these education reforms, reforms in education? I also would like to know what the status is of the law program, and are we still within budget where that program is concerned? I see an amount divided over several organizations and the same amount for community schools, and I would like to know the program details for the community schools, which is a concept and which several organizations are executing. Of course, I read the information, or the explanation rather, given by the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs regarding the lack of repairs to booths in the Jocelyn Arendelle Festival Village. And in that statement, the Prime Minister, I am still with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, but in that explanation by the Minister of General Affairs, it was stated that the second bidding did not go good, or something to that effect. And I would really like a better explanation as to why this matter could not happen, could not take place. The booths could not be repaired. There was a second bidding process that did not go well, if that can be better explained. I noted for where the school cleaning is concerned, that there has been a jump from, I believe, 100 and something thousand guilders to 800,000 guilders, and I would like that jump to be explained. I would like to know if the insurance of our students is intact and running and no issues there. I believe it was last year that via a budget amendment here in Parliament, that an amount, I think it was 200,000, I believe, for dance schools on Sint Maarten was taken up in the budget. At the time, the minister indicated that he would have come with a structural program where subsidies to these schools are concerned. And I would like to know if since then, first I would like to know how did that amendment to the budget, how did that work out? And is there now a structural program project in place for these schools? The minister briefly, and I missed what exactly he said, about the issue of vaping. Also not a new topic for those who know me. And so I would like to know exactly what the minister said about vaping. I just heard the word vaping and didn't know what exactly he said about it. I would like to know. Under the VSA ministry, and I come to the social sickness insurance. I would like to know, considering the concerns as expressed over and over by, amongst others, the CFT, what is currently the financial relationship between government and SZV? And the amount that is budgeted for the government medical insurance, let me call it that, the so-called PPK, pay card system, of 17 million. So again, here we see we're in 2022. And in this budget 2024, under the column 2022, you should have actual, but it's not yet the annual account, so you can't call it definite, but you can call it the actual expenses in 2022, 17 million, the budget 2023, 17 million, and the budget 2024, 17 million. So were the expenses in 2022 17 million is my question, and is it based on that again in 2023 we budget 17 million, 2024 17 million. And then under the, I know what it means of course, but they have it under BZV, 32.3 million is budgeted. I'm still looking at the financial relationship government and SZV, so the payment of government to SZV for managing some of these funds. And then we have where the contribution to SZV by the government has been reduced from 6.5 million guilders to 5.5 million guilders, and I would like to know the reason therefore. And of course, I would have to ask, where is the legislation that will repair the SZV legislation so that the persons such as sole proprietors, vendors, taxi drivers, and bus drivers who now fall between the cracks will be included in the medical insurance? And I'm sure the minister knows that this session would not have been closed off without I asking it. So not to disappoint him, where is that repair legislation where these persons can get coverage? I think it is a grave oversight that a director of a company, could get SZV coverage because he or she is considered a worker, but our little small and micro entrepreneurs cannot because they are considered a boss, employer. And I think it's a grave oversight. I do not believe that we have to change the law. I think just amending a national decree can deal with this matter. But if the minister does not want to go in that direction, then at least make the repair legislation a matter of urgency. Not unfamiliar for the minister coming from me is also the question of, has the financial assistance, the so-called understand, been adjusted, which had to happen because the understand, and financial assistance is based on the minimum wage. So with the increase in minimum wage, there might have to be an adjustment of the financial assistance. Has that been done? Has that exercise been done? And what has it, if so, what has it yielded? I asked this the last time around, and again I ask it, although there is an amount for the Diabetes Foundation as a subsidy in the budget of VSA, for what I've learned, this foundation does not receive the subsidy. And again, my question is why? The last time I think I was told they haven't been requesting it, so then, but it's still in the budget. And I can't see a foundation like Diabetes Foundation not needing, or not, that a subsidy for them would not be a helpful thing. And then I go to the Ministry of TIAT. And in the budget of the Ministry of TIAT, the minister speaks of a National Economic Development Plan. What and where is this National Economic Development Plan? There has been, there should be, there will be a public transportation assessment. When? Our tourism and marketing, or our tourism marketing and promotion in this budget, albeit increased with approximately 700,000 guilders, is 5 million guilders. And thus I ask, with this amount, how many of the things that we saw in the beautiful slide from the minister can be done? We're promoting and marketing our country for 5 million guilders. Yet we see a presentation that includes everything possible under the sun where marketing and promotion is concerned. So I would really like to see how this 5 million, it's in the budget, but how can the things projected be done with a 5 million guilders budget? Well, what is our budget without Carnival and something about Carnival? My question to the Minister of TIAT, there's no money budgeted for 2024 for Carnival, by the way. So what is the vision of the Minister of TIAT for Carnival? Without a budget for Carnival, will the government market Carnival or not? I would like to know the status of the casino control system. And in asking that, I ask if the minister is aware of the term protect the player. That's a term used when it comes to gambling. And who should usually pay to protect the player are the ones offering the playing, offering the gambling. Is there any thought or thinking in this respect? The Minister of TIAT mentioned, and several of my colleagues asked about it, and I will again as well, the Phillipsburg Marketplace, and mentioned 2 signatures lacking. I would like to know, since when 2 signatures are lacking to get this thing moving forward, to get this project moving forward, and whose signatures are lacking? As far as it pertains to the Harold Jacks Point beautification, what is the timeline for this beautiful presentation that we saw? I don't know if there are others like me, but I can tell you something. When I drive along the Colby Hill, I keep my head turned in the next direction, because I swear that an accident is going to happen there. And I think it's just a matter of time, one. And secondly, the government that, subtly or not, is promoting that location as a tourist attraction can and will be held accountable for anything that goes wrong there. You cannot have a location like that encouraging persons to go up to our flag, and it is so dangerous to climb that, especially when you have had a rainfall. So what is the timeline? When will we see this getting started? And is the government going to say something before that? Go up at your own risk or something before something happens to someone inadvertently, and government is going to be looked at as promoting that for, as a tourist attraction, because that is what happens. That's the way it is used, it is sold. I go now to Vromi, and like one or two of my colleagues, what is the situation with the St. Maarten Housing Development Foundation? I saw it in, I believe, two parts of the budget. In one instance, it was decreased from 700 and something thousand down to 300 and something thousand, so it was decreased by 428,744 guilders. So what is the status of the subsidy agreement and, again, the relationship St. Maarten Housing Development Foundation? The last time I asked about the status of the vendors on the pond fill, the whole pond fill going down, I was told by the Minister of Romi, they're there. Well, obviously they're there. But my question is, what about them? There were talks going on with them about them having to move. Was that whole idea discarded? What guarantee or comfort do these very small entrepreneurs have with respect to their daily livelihood? What is going on with and for them? A colleague asked as well regarding the acrobatics report. There is an outstanding request for a meeting with the minister on this matter, and for the life of us, we have not been able to get a minister in here and give us a reaction. That's the Minister of Romi, by the way, on this report. And I just want to ask all ministers here present if any of you or all of you know and have taken note of this report. And because I can't believe that all our ministers have and would be nonchalant about the report. I honestly don't believe that. So I'm asking, are the other ministers aware of this report? Because it did leave a mark on the members of parliament when it was presented to us. And then I asked the minister of it yesterday, I asked the Minister of Finance regarding this matter yesterday in another meeting, and now as the replacement for the Minister of Romi, I want to ask the minister to bring the answer along in these answers for me, please, and that has to do with the question whether the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Maarten had taken the government of St. Maarten or whoever of St. Maarten to court with the request to have the structures on Mullet Bay removed, so to have the beach cleaned. Apparently, there was either an attempt to take this to court or there was a court case, and the request by CBCS or someone on behalf of CBCS was denied. We have learned, and I'm asking, is that correct? Is that correct? And who did it take to court? Was it the government? What was the basis of them filing this court? And in that context, I want to ask a question that I've asked before as well. And that has to do with what our civil code says about beaches in general. And that is Book 5 of our civil code that says something to the effect of restriction of the public access to beaches belonging to the country through alienation, encumbrance, use, or otherwise requires special permission to be granted by national ordinance. Article 26 of Book 5 of our Civil Code, and I would like an explanation on that from the Minister of Romi, where management of our beaches in general is concerned. And thus, with that, ministers, we have come to the end of the questions to be posed by, which have been posed by members of Parliament. I know some members have already started to forward these questions in writing to our Secretary General, and the coordination with the ministers and their staff is ongoing. And I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes now, just to get an understanding as to how we will proceed. So this meeting is adjourned for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome back. Welcome back to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting of Parliament, Central Committee meeting number 15, handling the draft budget 2024. Today we have had the presentation by all ministers regarding their ministries. The only minister physically not able to be present was the Minister of VROMI, Minister Duran. A brief presentation was given on the substitute minister for VROMI, Minister Irion, and so we have had all of the presentations, which were followed by questions by the members of Parliament, which have been noted. And the meeting now, the Central Committee meeting, will now be adjourned until tomorrow morning when we continue at 10 a.m. So this Central Committee meeting will continue starting with the ministers providing answers to the questions from the members of Parliament. Questions as well as answers in the legislative trajectory need to be done in report form. So that is the process that will also be undertaken while or since the questions have been asked and the answers being provided. With that, I will, as I said, adjourn this meeting until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. I wish everyone a pleasant evening, and until tomorrow, God's willing, meeting adjourned.